Hey friends and neighbors, I'm Don. This is chapter 4 of my Great Guitar Build-Off Challenge here in my garage. This episode, no stories, no screwing around. Let's get to work. I want to mount the neck into the body, and in order to do that I have to route the neck pocket, and in order to do that I have to determine the angle that I want the neck pocket to be in relation to the top of the body. Before I can determine the angle of the neck pocket, I have to figure out how tall the bridge is, and before I can figure out how tall the bridge is, I have to have a bridge. So we're going to make a bridge. This is an aluminum saddle, or it might actually be aluminum. I'm not sure. It's one of those two. And this is the right thing because Paul Bigsby made a lot of his own parts, forged them from aluminum and or aluminum. My first thought was to mount it to the body like an old style tune-o-matic, just like that. And I quickly realized that will give me no intonation control whatsoever. I'd have to get it in the exact right place on the very first try, which with a bolt-on neck, yeah, I don't have confidence in that at all. So what I need is an aluminum base for this saddle. So here's a piece of aluminum. I'm pretty sure it's aluminum because I bought it in the US. And that will be the base, cut off about right there, for the bridge. The thing I have to do is drill a couple of holes into the aluminum for these to thread into. So I made a template. There it is. So this, the holes go all the way through. This will guide the drill bit into the aluminum. And that's the plan. Here we go. At first I just tried to drill the holes partway through, but then it turned out I wouldn't be able to tap without my tap being able to go all the way through. So I went and drilled them all the way through. I should get some grown-up tap handles. All this filing took a really long time. I'm just trying to angle and make a nice shape on the ends of the bar. I ended up with a big pile of aluminum shavings on the floor and some blisters. And then I decided this piece of aluminum was too tall, so I wanted it to be a little thinner, which if I had a milling machine would have been a 5-minute job, but instead I did this for a long time. Trying to put a shape on the ends, a little curve. Spindle sander worked pretty well, except the camera was confused by it. Then a bunch of sanding and polishing. Now the saddle, on the bottom of it, it had kind of an angle to it, so it would rock back and forth on the adjustment wheels. So I filed that flat as best I could so it would sit flat on the wheels. Okay, I did some drawing off camera. Now that I know how tall my bridge is, I measured the height of the bridge. I left a little adjustment room at the bottom. Height of the bridge comes out to here. It's 3/4 approximately of an inch, about 20 millimeters tall. So then I made a mark here. The top of the bridge is also, of course, the bottom of the strings. So I took the neck and I measured the thickness of the neck to the frets in the middle here, and I marked that. The existing neck pocket is just about this deep, 11/16 or 17¼ millimeters. I measured that to the top of the frets, and that's that mark there. Add 2 millimeters for string clearance, and now I have the bottom of the strings. Bottom of the strings, draw a line and connect them. So down here at this end, I have an angle. Now here's a funny thing that happened. I was measuring this angle with a protractor and I was getting 6, 7 degrees. 6, 7, even 8 degrees. I've remeasured, redrew, all this stuff. 6, 7, 8 degrees. That's crazy. That's, unless Paul is about 3 degrees. People talk about 3 degrees. That's the right angle for this. And then I pulled out a different protractor, and this one is marked in ½ degrees. So that would have been amusing to show on YouTube, but I'm confessing to you now. And this one comes out to about 3 degrees when I get it centered. Check both ends, and it ends up being 3 degrees. So I'm good. I'm good on neck. I'm going to have to make some kind of ramp or sled or something to hold the template up. I noticed the neck I'm using has kind of a curved heel here, whereas a regular Stratocaster neck is flat, completely flat. So I'm going to have to use a Telecaster template, I think, and sort of flatten it, carve it, whatever to fit this. But I need to be able to set that template at a 3 degree angle. So that's the next problem. So I have 2 pieces of MDF I can stack together and cut 2 identical ramps. I did get some super glue accelerator, but if I want open time to be able to move things around and adjust, I still just use the weight. I'll use this piece of masonite for my neck template, so it needs a center line. I happen to have a Strat template, but the neck pocket was slightly too wide for this particular neck, so I added some walnut veneer to tighten it up. I think I can show less and less of the masking tape and super glue trick. I think we all got it by now. Well, that is a nice snug fit on the sides, perfect on the sides. There's a little gap here. This is a weird uneven shape, being a factory reject cast off. So I'm going to try to fill these in, fill in this gap a little bit, so when I route the pocket it will be tight up against here. A bunch of trimming and sanding and scraping later. Put these 3 degree wedges, make sure they're parallel with each other and both lined up at the tip there. You can see I also cut a couple spy holes in here so I can make sure I know where the center line is when I get it stuck to the body. So I need to remove the part of the top that's covering the existing neck pocket. But also I need to be able to see the back wall of the existing neck pocket so I know where to put my template. I'm using a laminate trimmer bit with the bearing on the bottom just to give me a couple keyholes. And now I can see where to line everything up. I realize this isn't a very clear shot of what's going on, but I'll show you a close-up in a second. There's what it looked like inside there when I was doing it. Just imagine that spinning around really fast and cutting away into the edges and the bottom. And we ended up with that. A nice neck pocket. Very snug. Well, that's going to have to trim that a little bit, but we can test this. We can test the angle, which is right to there. At first I thought the fit was off because of the corners, that they weren't dug out enough, so I did some chiseling with a gouge here, cleaned up those corners, did some scraping. But I still wasn't happy with the fit. It was very snug in there, and the front had a gap. My next hypothesis was that the back wall hadn't gotten routed all the way to the 3-degree angle that I needed, so it was pushing the neck at the bottom. So I put the template back on, moved it back slightly to make sure that back wall got the correct angle. And I made the neck pocket slightly deeper because after testing the neck angle, it looked like there was some extra room for that. But after that, I think I discovered the real reason the neck wasn't fitting the way I wanted. This is not a right angle on the sides here. It's wider at the top than it is at the bottom. I think this one is pretty... this one is slightly wider at the top also. Alright, so we'll have to adjust for that. Alright, I've done a bunch of sanding and chisel work and stuff off camera to try to get this as close as possible. It's pretty tedious, so I didn't bother recording it. But there we go. That's about as close as I'm going to be able to get it. Pretty tight here. A little gap here, but some of this corner will be coming off. Snug on this side. I lasered it. It is centered. I'll show you that in a little while. So I did some other thinking off camera as well about the neck connection. And I'm thinking, I wonder if I want to recess this a little bit, if I have time to do that. I think that's a kind of a Bigsby shape here. That'll work. Okay, after some more chiseling and gouging and sanding, got this kind of shape going on here. I've saddled this thing up yet again. I'm going to use that to drill the neck pocket holes, so they'll be perpendicular to this line, to this plane right here. That's next. I'm starting with 1/8" guide holes. These aren't the final holes, they're just to locate everything. I'll have to mount this up to the body next, make sure it's straight, and then I'll be able to mark the holes for the screws in the neck itself. Looks pretty straight with the construction laser. And the way I've clamped it here has covered up one of the holes. I've just worked with 3 holes to begin with and go back and catch the last one later. First I want to mark where the neck screw holes go in the neck itself. Then while I still have the 1/8" guide holes, I'll make the recesses for the grommets. I'm widening the guide holes in the body so that the screws can fit in. They shouldn't bite in the body. They should slide in, but not too loose. Still not doing anything with that last hole. I decided the recesses were too shallow and I wanted them just a little bit deeper. I've got the depth marked on the bit, and I have the neck resting on a radius sanding block to try to keep it horizontal. This is a little candle. I just like to get some wax on the screws so they drive into the maple smoothly. Feels pretty solid. I checked to make sure it was still straight. And because it was still straight off camera, I went ahead and did the exact same process with the fourth hole. Now that I know exactly where the neck is going to be, I can clean up some of the extra around where the neck is mounted and smoothen the curves that come into the sides of the neck. Now that I know where the neck goes, I can know exactly where the bridge is going to go. I'm going to use the strings through the body. I've got these little grommets for the top, little tiny grommets, and I've got these bullet grommets for the back. So drilling string through holes is tricky, keeping them straight. Normally I'd use a bridge plate as its own template. But unfortunately, let's see if I can focus on this. This one is just a little too wide for this bridge. This Gretsch bridge is fairly narrow. If you can see, the holes there are a little wider. So one thing I don't want to have is I don't want to have the strings spread out at the back of the bridge. If anything, I want them to come in a little narrower behind the bridge. So I need to make another template. I don't have a narrower one than this. So I made a jig. You can see I've got a fence, I've got a stop, and the really fun part is I've got these little spacers. Each spacer is 3/8 of an inch, and I have my template here. So this can go here, and we'll just do like this. So those spacings are a little more suitable for this bridge. I think that is about a good spot for that. That's a good break angle based on nothing really, except it looks right to me. One of my favorite tricks the internet taught me a long time ago was when you're drilling these holes, if you drill straight through from the top to the back, the drill bit will wander, and when it comes out the back, the holes won't be lined up. So what I do is I drill all of the holes halfway through, a little more than halfway through. And then I go back and I drill the outside 2 holes all the way through. So on the back, you have 2 holes. And you get some kind of little pin or drill bit, something that's the same size as the holes, and you can use it to line up your template on the back. And then you just have to drill the middle 4 holes halfway through again, and they will meet the holes you drilled from the front, and they will be exactly as lined up as your template is. One of those holes did go a little wonky on me. It was a little crooked on the template here. So that ended up being the 4th string. It's just a little bit out of line there. I have to enlarge these holes later, so I may be able to fudge that one back so it looks straight again. I'll worry about that later. So pickups. We know where the bridge goes, we know where the neck goes, now we can decide where the pickups go. As much as I would love to spend $600 on a set of aluminum Bigsby reproduction pickups, that's not going to happen. I'm going to use these P90s, which also kind of look blingy. They have a little gold foil decoration on them. So I think it'll look nice. I think it'll look very nice. There they are. That's where they'll be. So I need to make a routing template for the P90s, which is just a rectangle, so that shouldn't be too hard. Some pieces to the right size. They'll go together like this. Now we have a little template here, and I'll use that to route on another piece of masonite, so I have another template, but I did it off camera already. So here it is. There's the template for the P90s. I did have to patch it up a little bit on this side, so with some paper and super glue, smooth that out. But it's a good size, I think. It's gonna work. I thought it was kind of funny when I started drilling in here. I was surprised because I'd forgotten that there were already pickup cavities inside here. It's been several weeks and I just totally forgot. So it surprised me when the drill went all the way into air. All right, binding. I'm going to bind this in white because I like white. I think that Paul Bigsby did black and white. I don't know, I like white better than black. And I've done a little test strip here to get the depth correct. And it's a little bit proud at the top, but it is deep enough to cover all of my sins along the edge here. I have this binding bit that is set at the right depth, so I'm going to try routing and we'll see how that goes. Routing this channel went so fast that I didn't even really notice. I was just showing pictures of the back of my hand. But then right at the end I thought, well, we should have something dramatic and beautiful. Of course, I couldn't get the router bit into this little corner, so this all has to be done by hand. I've got a marking knife. I've got some things to try to guide me to keep the ledge of the channel straight. Little razor knife. Got some chisels. I've just tried different things to try to get it straight without chewing it up too much. Starting with the scroll area, I'm heating the binding up with the heat gun, try to bend it into the shape that it needs to be. And then my plan is to hold it in place, douse it with acetone. It will melt the plastic and stick it to the wood. That's what I've done in the past. All right, well, I was off camera for a little bit. My acetone game is not strong today. I did a job like this about a year ago. I had a lot less trouble. So I've had to supplement with some super glue. This corner's kind of kicking my butt, and this is now super glued on there. But I'm going to persist. I think maybe I'm just not getting enough acetone in there, and I'm slopping super glue down here. So onward. Okay, it's a different day. I've been kind of hesitating on this because I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to try to bend this around this tight corner. I don't know, it's an adventure. Might have to, if it doesn't work, might have to put a little bevel in here and put a joint in there. I'd rather not. Let's see if this will work. There's a little gap, but I can't imagine doing better than that. Some of that will scrape off. All right, to recap, I tried doing the binding with acetone, which I've used before, and it didn't work. So I'm using different binding, as it turns out. This is the binding I used before with acetone. This is the new binding, also with just acetone, and this is the new binding using Bind All from the big Scottish-American guitar shop supply company. So let's see what we got. That's pretty solid. That is not solid. And that is solid. Okay, so it's not me, it's the binding. It wasn't made to be glued with acetone. One might wonder why I didn't just start with this dedicated binding glue to begin with, and the reason is because acetone leaves no residue. You can kind of slop it all over and there's no penalty, it just evaporates. Any other kind of glue you got to clean up later. And this actually turns out to be a lot less of a mess holding the body vertically like this. There's nothing spilling. It just stays right in its little channel, and that would have been a smarter way to start. I'll do that next time. There was a little gap here in the waist. So I've clamped this sanding thing in here, clamped it up against the bottom with a lot of padding. I was concerned about this joint, this inside joint here. I didn't bevel it very well, and the pieces didn't really fit in there well. There's a gap. Also the tip here by the cutaway, but that one turned out to be fine. So I'm trying to figure out how much of this I need to redo. I was kind of counting on being able to use a slurry of acetone and binding material to fill in little gaps. But I tried it with a little super glue and binding fragments, and that seems to work just fine. I don't think I have to redo all this stuff. I think I can scrape it down and patch it up as necessary, and it'll be fine. I don't know that I could do better if I start over, so. All right, on to other things for the moment. I wasn't sure at first I was going to do this, but to do a complete Bigsby tribute, I think I really have to do this part. Fun fact, this piece of maple that I'm cutting to add grew right next to the piece of alder that I added to the body after I took that chunk out. The two pieces are different colors, but that's only going to show on the back. The front will be covered with a veneer. I think I can stain the new piece to match the old piece, or at least get it close. Alright friends and neighbors, I'm going to stop there and go try to edit this into something coherent. I wish my sister would edit these for me, but I don't think she wants to. I kind of like where I ended up here. Here's a glamour shot of where we're ending. Need to scrape the binding, need to sand everything, need to get it all prepped for finish. There's level and crowning of frets. There is something wrong with this curve here, which I'm going to have to go study and figure out why it looks more Fender-ish than Bigsby-ish. I'll tighten that up. There's going to be a walnut veneer goes on here. There's some walnut decorations for the body, and a lot of sanding. So that's what you'll get next time if you come back. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.